Two, one. Welcome to a new episode of the Electrek podcast. I am Fred Lambert, your host, and I'm joined as usual by Seth Winchow. How are you doing this week, Seth?
I'm good.
All right, I'm glad you're doing well. This week's episode is sponsored by Recurrent Auto. You can check your battery before buying a used TV and monitor your battery performance with monthly insight using Recurrent's free battery reports for EV owners. We're going to have a little bit more to say about them later on the show, so stay tuned for that. But we're going to dive into the news this week right away, starting by something that has been on everyone's mind, something that kind of co-op the whole news cycle this week. It's one. I mean, I'm in Alabama right now, and just like I walk around and I hear people talking about it on the street, quite literally. It's Elon's takeover of Twitter, or his attempt to take over on Twitter. So when we left it up last week, Elon had invested into the company, buying about 9% of the share, becoming the largest individual shareholder in the company. Then he was joining the board, or at least we thought he was joining the board. He said he accepted a board seat on the on Twitter's board of directors, but that we noted that seemed to be a move to prevent him from taking over the whole company because it included a clause that said that he cannot own more than 14.9% of Twitter shares. And then what we learned a few days later is that it was announced by the CEO of the company, but actually it was just on the 9th, I think it happened. And so just basically 2 days after he accepted the board seat, when it was supposed to become official that Elon was going to be on the board, he let them know that he was not going to accept the board seat. And the CEO made it sound like it was like, oh, it's a good thing. This is what we wanted, basically, even though you offered him a board seat just days ago. And even warned of like there's going to be a lot of noises coming your way, and warned employees, I mean. So be something to watch out for. So what
Yeah,
we
I think
speculated,
I think he called it distraction, right?
yeah, distraction, noise,
And
sure
so
enough.
the foreshadowing of what's going to happen because he knew behind the scenes what was going to happen.
Yes, and what pretty much everyone knew too. Like, so we reported at the time that if Elon is walking away from that, is that it's most likely that he decided that the hostile takeover situation would make more sense for what he had in mind. And sure enough, just a few days later, on April 14th, that was yesterday, Elon made an official offer to buy Twitter at $54.20 per share. So he had to fit that 420 in there somewhere. So he's offering to buy 100% of Twitter share at 430. That he said that's a 55% premium over the day where he first started investing in the company, and 38% premium over the day when his investment was disclosed. Of course, that's when the stock popped up, skyrocketed from his disclosure that he invested in a company. Then that's where his announcement, his proposal is starting to become a little bit weirder. So he says that my offer is my best and final offer. So he's not here to negotiate, apparently. Though obviously a lot of people say that and then end up negotiating after anyway. But then that's where the threat starts. If it is not accepted, I will need to reconsider my position as a shareholder, which is not clear, but make it sound very much like he would sell his existing shares, which is a lot of shares. And just as the stock popped off when he announced that he was investing in the company, if he starts unloading share, also if he like the way you can unload share in a way that many shares in a way that's going to hurt the stock price a lot. So that would be a problem for Twitter. So, in terms of his logic for taking the company private, buying all the share, taking it private, he says, I invested in Twitter as I believe in its potential to be the platform for free speech around the globe. So, the platform. And I believe free speech is a societal imperative for a functioning democracy. All right, sound good. However, since making my investments, probably not just since he's been making his investment, he's been talking about that for a while, I now realize the company will neither thrive nor serve the societal imperative in its current form. Twitter needs to be transformed as a private company. So he elaborated a bit on what he wanted to do with it during an interview at the TED 2022 yesterday, where he said that, well, I mean, he's still very gun ho about this idea of free speech and everything, and he clarified that basically what he would do, it's something that a lot of other people have been trying to do, emulate Twitter platform, but instead of having any kind of censoring that's based on politics or even some specific like term of use, it would strictly be you can say whatever you want as long as it's legal. Basically, that's what it wasn't as clear as that, but as close as it gets to that. So as long as it operates in a market where laws prohibit speech to a degree, most often like in the US, if you're trying to incite violence or something like that, then that would be obviously prohibited, but everything else would be allowed to a degree. And he talked about some of the major improvement that you would want to do is the idea that you would want to open source the code, the algorithm behind Twitter, and make it so that any kind of change would be visible, would be transparent, so that you know exactly what is promoted, what is demoted, and also edits would also be part, although they already exist as part of Twitter Blue, the subscription service. And that's something else that he's been talking about subscription service. He's been talking about removing ads, trying to move away from Twitter doing ads, which is going to be a hard thing to do because I don't know what's the take rate on Twitter Blue, but I don't believe it's quite high. Did you get Twitter Blue, Seth?
I did.
Yes, me too. No, it's useful, like not to have like it's not that expensive too. I think like
yeah, $3 a month is fine.
Yeah, that's a good price point normally when you go around that. But yeah, someone just mentioned to the poison pill. So apparently the board has been considering. The board doesn't seem to be quite thrilled by this offer, to say the least. Nope. And it's clear, like some people are a bit confused about what happens now that the offer has been made official. It's been filed with the ACC and everything. Technically, the board decides they can refuse the offer right away, and it doesn't even go to a shareholders vote. It's like they have the right to do that because technically anyone could just like, hey, I offer $3 per share on Twitter right now and file it with the ACC, and like they're not gonna push that to a shareholder vote every time. So the shareholder, but of course the whole idea behind this whole concept is like the board has a fiduciary duty to do what's best for the shareholders. So if they think that this could be a good thing for shareholders, and you would have to argue that it is, like you cannot argue that you have to give the option. Basically, my understanding most of the time, if the price is indeed higher than the current sell price of the current market price of the stock, they basically have to bring it to a shareholder vote because that gives anyone the opportunity to sell the stock at a higher price. So I think it's going to go to a shareholder vote. I don't see it not happening. However, whether it's going to pass, that's the big question here. And the board apparently, in order, even if they to do anything, they are considering the poison pill defense, which would prevent anyone from buying more than a certain percentage of the company. But at the same time, it would negatively affect the stock, so the stock price. So that's where we are as it stands at this moment. We don't have an official shareholder vote coming on everything, but we have a ton of opinion in terms of what it would mean for the platform, the Twitter, for speech in general, especially in the US, for Elon as someone that is quite busy already. Like the stock in Twitter, well, the stock on Twitter reacted kind of weirdly yesterday. Like it went up on the news, of course, because you're offering like $50 a share, but then it went down like by just as much, like because I feel like probably the shareholders just weren't that convinced by the offer. And but Tesla went down a lot because like if Elon buys Twitter, like the one thing is that people are assuming that he's gonna likely have to sell some shares of Tesla in order to pay for the rest of the money, because he's probably have to take out like maybe not the full amount, but a significant amount. The whole offer is basically worth around $41 billion. And on top of that, it's just taking a lot. It's going to take him some time, like maybe a lot of time, even especially at the beginning, which is going to be time that he's not going to spend on Tesla. So I don't know. Seth, let's start out. Like, what's your whole opinion on this?
So, I mean, obviously, it seems kind of crazy, especially as somebody who's used Twitter for a long time. Like, and who's followed Elon Musk, it doesn't seem like his, we have a personal history with him, and free speech doesn't seem like his highest priority, especially in regards to Twitter. People who watch the show probably know that he blocked the Electrek account and Fred's account after Jamie's story, where we talked about Autopilot 2.5 owners having to pay for full self-driving, even after when they bought Autopilot 2.5, Tesla said that this is all the hardware they'll ever need. So we thought that was like, hey, this guy doesn't seem to be, playing fair, I guess, so to speak. So there's a lot of, nuance to this. I found the interview that he gave with, I think, Chris Anderson, used to be a Wired editor, really revealing in that he didn't really know much about how Twitter works. How, he's like, is that illegal to yell fire in a theater? Well, it should be. He also didn't really seem to have like any sort of moderation, like plans.
Concrete plans. Let's say concrete plans about, like,
right.
It
didn't seem like he had thought this whole thing through.
So regarding that, here's my quick take on it. Around that, like, I have to think that he has someone in mind to do this, to run this whole show, because I don't think he can take this on right now. Like, I don't think it makes sense for him to take this on. And from that interview, what I got a lot out of it is a lot of his plans sounds like exactly what Jack Dorsey has been advocating for a while, but hasn't been able to implement,
right,
because he's not as influential as him on the board. So I have this kind of fantasy that, like, because again, like you just explained, like, I don't know if I believe everything Elon says about free speech. Like, I mean, he literally told us at one point that we shouldn't have access to Tesla because we posted information that he didn't want to be out there. Like, so that's literally not free speech. Like, you don't you're trying to censor what we're saying here. And then I'm not talking just about like blocking people on Twitter. Obviously, blocking people on Twitter is not directly related to free speech. Like, you can still speak and not don't have to be heard by everyone. But anyway, so my like perfect scenario that I could see happen would be that he takes over Twitter and he just gives it, well, when I say gave it back to like, give full power back to Jack Dorsey, right, so that he can implement his plan that have been ongoing for a long time in terms of making the platform open source, open sourcing the code at Twitter. Like, that's something that he mentions directly in that interview yesterday, where he would put the whole thing on GitHub, basically let everyone analyze it and anyone critique it. That's something that Jack Dorsey had been advocating for a while, but he just couldn't get done. Things about also Jack Dorsey had suggested like a compromise, like we keep a moderated Twitter like we have right now, and we launch an exact version of it, but without the moderation, other than, like he said, anything that's unlawful gets removed. The old good old days of Reddit, basically, where that was the Reddit philosophy at one point. Of course, that as soon as money gets into it, like, people get and it gets hard to get advertising, Reddit move away from that. If you have this company private and you manage to move people to a subscription-based service, like, that's not as big of an issue. Now, I think the idea, though, Jack Dorsey might have suggested that you have both versions at the same time as a compromise, because he couldn't get it done. Now, if Elon would be the majority owner of the company, maybe they don't have the two versions; they just have the Wild West version, if you will. So that could be interesting. Like, I could see that happening. That would be a good, like, a kind of almost like an altruistic move from Elon. But if he takes over and he gets personally, like he said, of course, I'm not going to get personally involved in moderation, don't worry. But there's obvious concerns from the world's richest man owning what is being sold as like the world's town square, the world platform for discussion, and like this, there's concerns in that.
Yeah, and you mentioned something like, a revenue model. Like Elon said in the interview that he doesn't care about, in making money or whatever. But at the same time, he said he wanted to keep on the largest 200 shareholders. So
2000. He wants to keep
2000,
as many shareholders that it's allowed in the private company. I
right,
think that's more of a move of like he doesn't want to have to take out too much money in order to buy
right.
the for like if he has to like put $20 billion, that's fine, but doesn't want to put much more than that.
But how do you keep, like, capitalists on board
Hmm.
when you have no desire to make money or whatever? I mean, it just doesn't sound like he thought this whole thing through. Usually he knows every single little bit about, like he obviously knows electric vehicles quite well. He knows spaceships, surprisingly well for a CEO. Like most CEOs don't know as much as he does about the companies they run. He doesn't seem to know much about how Twitter works. I mean, it sounds like you're right. It sounds like he's just going to install Jack Dorsey to run Twitter the way Jack Dorsey wants to run Twitter. That's kind of the feeling I got. And Jack Dorsey has said nothing since he said when it was time for Elon to join the board, Jack Dorsey was like, "Yeah, everybody's going to work great together," and then
Yeah.
he shut up, really quiet about everything.
Yeah, that's my concern. Like that, like I said, that's my fantasy scenario if everything happens well. Because also, like again, we don't necessarily we don't really cover Twitter here. We cover Tesla, we cover electric vehicle transition. But I think it's obviously relevant with Elon being behind that because first of all, Elon has had an incredible impact on Tesla, and he continues to have an incredible impact on Tesla, which is critical to the world's transition to renewable energy. And him taking on this thing, which is it's gonna be so hard, like to do that. Like, it's just gonna it takes away from the main mission again. Like it's kind of it's a weird move from him. Uh, I honestly don't understand it completely, and I only would understand completely against if it was something like just I can afford it. Let's just me do it. Put Jack in charge, and that's gonna be better for everyone after that. Um, but like you said, the fact that Dorsey stopped talking about it after Elon said he quit the board, and also Elon himself never mentioned anything about Dorsey or anyone else running the show for him at Twitter, which I don't see a value in him not mentioning that because I feel like I mean, I don't know how much Dorsey was liked at Twitter, but he was, I think, fairly well liked because they begged him to come back at one point. Like, uh, so I think this whole thing would go smoother if Elon would be straight out like uh, Jack Dorsey and I agree on a lot of things regarding Twitter. So I just want to make it easier for him to implement those. Uh, but of course, Dorsey's also super busy with block and everything. So
Right. I mean, he's got a whole crypto scene happening, and that theoretically would drive Twitter to even like higher levels of integration with crypto, for better or worse. The one thing that was kind of eerie to me was when Chris Anderson asked Elon if there's like a plan B. He said, "Yep," and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but like, do you have any idea what the plan B is? I'm assuming the plan B is if Twitter board says no. Does Elon do just buy out shares, or what's the
I don't know if he want to get into buying out share. I think at this point, especially since he's already floated the idea of starting a competing platform, I think he would act on his threat to sell shares if he to reconsider his investment position. If they don't accept the offer, sell those share and invest that into starting another platform.
yeah
Um, that that's another extremely risky move because plenty of people have done it before. I've tried it before, and everyone else has failed. Like trying to not fail completely, and like there's platform like Minds, for example, that are still growing and existing. Like there are Twitter copy that are more based around free speech, but of course, they don't have an Elon Musk behind it. They don't have $3 billion behind it. That would all be super helpful. It's just super difficult to take someone that has been in a platform, an ecosystem like Twitter for a long time, and just take them out of that. It's super difficult to do.
Yeah, especially since Elon and his fan club on Twitter have, been on Twitter. So they would all have to just, ghost Twitter and jump on another platform. I guess that's kind of what happened to Trump and his crew.
Yeah, but then a lot of people that weren't banned in this crew, like, they still use that platform because, like,
Right.
it's just more convenient, and you have access to a much larger user
Right.
user base. So I don't even know if, like, that would be successful. Like, never bet against Elon, but
Right.
like, it's actually one of those. It sounds wild because if you ask me, what's more difficult to do, a social media platform, an electric vehicle company, a rocket company, a tunneling company, like, which one is more difficult to get going? Like, obviously the social media platform would be the last on your list of difficulties. But in this day and age, Twitter would have to screw up so bad for it to completely fail. And
Right.
to a degree, it's already failing on like at least a valuation scale. Like, the only reason this is happening right now is that Twitter was only worth $30 billion when Elon started investing in it, which is a fraction of what, like, Facebook is valued at.
Right.
Probably a fraction of even LinkedIn. I would assume that LinkedIn was worth a lot more too. I'm not even sure, but
I think they're part of Microsoft now.
oh, that's right. They're not on the public market separately though.
I don't know.
Just like how much LinkedIn value, even like how much Microsoft paid for it would be interesting to know. Because anyway, eh, 26 billion. So basically basically Twitter when Elon started investing
Right.
in it.
Well,
But yeah, I mean,
that
there's going to be a lot that can come out. Like, I know that the Wall Street Journal is writing an article right now about just to understand Elon's what he sees in terms of the personal value in Twitter, in terms of his own use to it. And they've been reaching out to a lot of people that have interacted with Elon through Twitter, including ourselves. And it's going to be interesting because they're doing it from a data standpoint. So Elon obviously sees a ton of value in the platform. He's been extremely successful at it, but which
yeah.
leads a lot of people to be worried. Like, if he valued the impact that he had on his own career, on his own impact on the world so much, there's a natural fear of, like, is he going to just try to amplify that? I think it's a natural fear to have. For the most part, I believe Elon. I believe he's sincere in his goals with that. But I think the fear is still warranted to a degree, like at least to some kind of degree.
Yeah, and there's always a possibility that, obviously Twitter's board is probably reaching out to Google and Apple and saying, "Hey, now would be a good time to buy us if you're ever going to think about buying us. Like, make an offer, we'll take it."
That's a good
So
point.
so we don't know how this is all going to shake out, and that's kind of why it's so interesting and exciting. It's hard for me to, like, when I think about all the possibilities, I can't, like, I just get so, like, wound up in so many different possibilities, and it's such a big part of our lives. Not huge part of our lives, but Twitter is, something that we do every day. So it would be quite interesting to see how this goes.
Yeah, I'm still. If you ask me, like, I don't know what's the percentage of chance that Twitter accept the offer, but if they do, I'm still hopeful that Elon will just, like, give up control and let it be run by someone that's going to implement all those open source idea. And if that's the case, I think that's going to be good for the platform. I think honestly, it's gonna be a good thing. So I'm not too much on the fear side of things, but I am worried that he takes on this thing. That's my biggest worry about this whole thing, which kind of lead us to this interview too yesterday, because there was a Twitter talk, but there was a bunch of other talk too that I just don't understand. Because in my view, Elon won already. Like, he has, like, Tesla won, Elon won, and sometimes he doesn't act necessarily like a winner with that stuff. Like there's a lot of dredging up the past. At least there was in his interview here on a few things. There was this weird question like that came out, like if you could go back in the past and change one decision. He decided to bring up the fact that the whole controversy with the founding of Tesla, and he blasted Martin Eberhard at the same time. At first, I thought he was going to play it cool, at least, like, because the question was not even about Tesla. It was just like one decision that you can change. And his answer was, I would start Tesla just with JB Straubel, pictured here, instead of invest in what Tesla was at the time, which was a company that was founded by Martin Tarpenning and Martin Eberhard. At first, I thought, okay, that's a fair response and everything, and he didn't mention Martin Eberhard or anything. But then you could see him bubbling with it, like the rage was starting to bubble, and then he had to mention it. He was like, because like there's this guy that Martin Eberhard that went on like a mission. He made it his life mission, if I'm quoting correctly, to make it sound like I wasn't the founder of Tesla. And I'm like, dude, you own 20% of one of the biggest company in the world right now in Tesla. You're the CEO of the company. There's no one in their right mind that wouldn't give you credit for bringing the company to where it is right now. Like, just let it go.
Yeah.
Just let that one go. For people who don't remember, like, he's not an official, like, original founder of the company, because the company was incorporated in 2003 by, again, Tarpenning and Eberhard. And then between that and Elon, there was actually another person that came on board, Ian Wright. For those who remember, that guy went out. He didn't stay long, like just a few years, and then he's founded like Wright Speed that did electric trucks or hybrid trucks. Elon joined in 2004, early 2004. So less than a year after the company was founded. And again, to be fair, at that point the company was nothing really. Like they were not doing it much. Like it was mainly an idea with some very small seed money. And he joined with the Series A investment round, so the very first non-seed investment round. And he invested 6.5 million of the 7.5 million round. So basically he led the whole round. And at that time also JB joined the company. And how Elon was made aware of Tesla at the time was that JB already was aware of the project because the project started in the Bay Area, and JB was kind of involved in the very small EV community in the Bay Area at that point. He converted a Porsche, I think, that he did.
Yeah, but that was like in high school, I think.
Yeah, that might have been in high school, but at that point he was out of Stanford. So JB connected Elon to AC Propulsion, which AC Propulsion was already connected to Tesla, and then they all got together basically. And I was like, all right, let me invest in that. He became chairman. So he wasn't officially a founder at that point, but the company wouldn't really exist without him, because he put the only money that they had at that point. And again, he was like basically employee 4 and with JB employee 5 of the company.
There's one thing, however, I have to say, Martin Eberhard wasn't a good manager, wasn't a good CEO. Like, we know all that stuff. But he did come up with the idea of putting, laptop batteries into an electric car. That was his. He had built like an e-reader beforehand with Tarpenning. And I mean, like, it's fact. Like, we can look in the archives. Like, that was his idea.
Yeah, you can look at the original pitch deck for Tesla pre-Elon Musk, before Elon Musk was on board. And it looks a lot. It's not, of course, the idea of Tesla evolved over the years. Like now you have like the solar panels, you have like a bunch of things and everything. You have the AI, you have the autonomous driving, you have all that stuff. That's all like Elon pushing that for sure. But I mean, the core idea of taking lithium-ion batteries off the shelf, making a very energy dense battery pack out of it, and making an electric vehicle that's just as, if not more compelling than their gasoline powered counterpart at that time, was definitely Eberhard and Tarpenning's idea. that they push hard for years. Now, to Elon's credit, if it wasn't from him, the company wouldn't have got to the Roadster. And if it wasn't for him kicking out Eberhard, probably Tesla would have failed around the Roadster release because of significant issue with Eberhard's management of the program. That's all fair. But even though, like, okay, so like, what's Eberhard's big like fault here? He didn't successfully manage the Roadster program. That's really at the core of it. That's his fault. And big whoop, like 99% of the population probably would have failed at doing that. And so kudos to Elon and JB and everyone else that was involved in making that successful. But that's it. That doesn't erase all the good that he's done for electric vehicle. I still consider Eberhard to be like a very important part of the electric vehicle revolution. And I don't know why Elon went out of his way to blast him literally 13 years after having won. Like he won not only he won like at life, like at the business, at the EV revolution being like the biggest part of it. He literally won the court case that made him a founder of the company. Like during that time when Eberhard was ousted, there was lawsuits and counter lawsuits about who owns part of Tesla. And like of course like Eberhard had a CEO compensation plan, and then he was ousted as CEO and all that. And the judge literally said, you know what? Based on all the information, yes, of course, Tarpenning and Eberhard should be considered co-founders. But Jan Wright, JB Straubel, and Elon, basically the 5 first employees of the company, should all be considered co-founders, which I thought was a perfectly fine compromise. Should have hinted there, but no, he had to blast him on that. And then he had to dredge up the SEC too.
That was weird.
Oh, that you leave that alone. And we saw another side of him that was interesting around that. Like you just get that, the whole like I'm obsessed with truth, and
that was weird.
Yeah, which I get from the physics standpoint. Like okay, like this is like the fundamental truth about the universe, that you can get an obsession about that, especially with Elon's kind of mindset. But then going from that to I'm obsessed with the truth, and they force me to settle. So we already kind of knew a lot about that from February when Elon's lawyers kind of petitioned the court to recant the settlement and make the Twitter's the SEC's Twitter police type of clause go away. But here's the main fact: like if I could get behind Elon, like just dredging that pass, if one thing. Bring some clear proof that the funding was secure. So that, because that was the big change yesterday. What he said, he said like, you know what, the funding was indeed secured, and the only reason that I settled with the SEC is because the Tesla was in financial troubles at the time. We needed to raise money, and the banks told us that Tesla will not be able to raise money in the middle of a SEC investigation. So settle the investigation. So Elon like settling. I don't think they even admitted to wrongdoing or anything like that. So technically, he didn't like say that he lied. He never said that he lied. He just like they just settled basically, and he took the slap there on the wrist, which it was a slap on the wrist. Let's be honest. They made him buy $40 million worth of share that make him like a $500 million richer because of that. Like let's not go crazy here. And
right.
So my only thing. So Elon, when again he said, the funding was indeed secured, and this SEC knew it, which the SEC repeatedly said that they don't think it was secured. So just bring us some clear proof where it was coming from, because it wasn't coming from him. The money wasn't coming from him at $420 a share back then. Elon was rich back then, but not that rich. So I don't know if you remember, said, but there was rumors of the Saudis
right
being interested in investing to take Tesla private. Rumors of Volkswagen, though Volkswagen kind of denied the rumors, but what it sounded to me, basically, both the Saudis and the Volkswagen rumors might have been true, but they were through of like some early type of talks.
Right,
like
exactly.
It's nothing that you could really say that funding was secured. So Elon didn't offer any more proof yesterday about that. And I went back to his lawyer's letter to the court from February, and all they said, like literally the argument is like Elon never had problem raising money for any of his projects. that doesn't really make it funding secured. Like the funding secured it's kind of a very specific language here. Um, so I don't know where like, and again he won. He won on that. Like this, the SEC looks like morons, making him pay $40 million for what is now worth $500 million or something. And Tesla is not in any financial trouble at this point. So the only thing that remains is like maybe the SEC is going to subpoena him sometimes when he tweets something that probably shouldn't tweet, to be honest. So
Right.
what's the big deal? I don't know.
Yeah. And it, like, if you're in the camp where you don't believe that Elon is saying everything that is 100% true, it kind of feels like this is what his new lawyer is kind of telling him to say. And like, this is the new case that they're going against the SEC to try to, get his Twitter access back. Although he's been tweeting all kinds of crazy stuff the whole time. So I don't know, like what he's even missing. But to me, it feels like his new lawyer is like, hey, you had funding secured, just you didn't really have, it wasn't written down, but like you had a handshake that's secure, whatever. So it kind of feels like something like that. And I mean, this is the guy who every year says full self-driving is coming, like clearly.
This is the year. This is the year. Said that was also part of the interview when Anderson asked him again. He was like, "Yeah, but I think this is the year."
It's crazy because in the same breath, he's like, "Yes, I know every other year I've said this for the past 6 years, but this time I know I'm right." Even though every other time he's said, "I know I'm right this time." Like, it's coming this year. And
like, he might be right, because
he's
gonna be right. My main issue with this is like what's the actual where's the actual goalpost on this though, on the FSD? Because I like this time the way he phrased it, because he changed the phrasing of the goalpost several times. So this time with I think this is the year, after being wrong several times, he said that the level of safety is gonna be just greater than human, but that doesn't mean much, because greater than human ain't that good, and probably not good enough for a lot of regulators to approve the system. So even if they achieve that, but it would again achieve it that within the standpoint of Tesla's vision-based AI approach, it has a great significance, and I'm not discounting here. Like this is incredible achievement, but this is nowhere near robotaxi level, I think.
Right.
I don't think the Tesla network Uber-like app is going to be launched because they determine that they are a little bit safer than human drivers, especially depending on what kind of metrics you use to determine that too. Because so far Tesla hasn't been great about releasing those metrics. On that front, on the FSD front, at this point, like I've said it several times, I'm in on the put up or shut up phase of it. Like, give us clear data about what's the disengagement rate on the FSD beta program, so that we can track correctly what kind of progress Tesla is making with the program. Because using the anecdotal data from the YouTubers and the Tesla Twitter people is just impossible to do.
Yeah, I mean, I've used FSD. It didn't seem like it was a year away or 2 years away. So that's anecdotal on my part. But like, what if Elon said, well, two things. Like, first of all, he's like, Twitter should open source their algorithm. Why doesn't Twitter open source autopilot? Like, we'll see exactly, what's
Tesla open source.
Yes, Tesla. Sorry. So I don't see why that doesn't happen. If that's the important part that everybody should know, and we should, have some sort of knowledge of what's going on. The second part is, if he really truly believes it, put some money behind it. Say, hey, if full self-driving doesn't come this year, after I've been saying for 6 years, you get your money back for full self-driving, or you get, some percentage back. Then I will start to believe that he's really believes that what he's saying.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't see it happening, but
No, I don't see it happening either, because I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, and somewhere, like, I don't know what part of Elon's brain believes what he's coming out of his mouth, but somewhere he knows that full self-driving is not coming this year.
Well, I think he knows that at least it's not the way that he's been talking about it for a while, because like, again, the timeline has changed, but also the goalpost has changed. So maybe he's right about the safety standard, but again, like literally, if at the very end of the year Tesla says, "Oh, we are safer than human," but based on what? Based on the data of the beta program, where the human has to be always ready to take control at the time. Like this is, yes, this is probably safer than just a human driving by himself, but it's not comparable to if no one is in the car. Like it's not the same thing. Anyway.
Yeah, and today's like today, if you're going to drive two autopilot software, Super Cruise is better because you don't have to put your hand on the wheel. You don't. I mean,
Mhm.
it works only on interstates and some highways. It doesn't work on the back roads, but literally, it's boring. I was in the a couple weeks ago. I was in the Hummer EV Super Cruise. Put it
Mhm.
on, hands off the wheel, just looking out like a passenger. It drives fine, like it works, and you don't have to have your hand on the wheel, pushing on the wheel, and you know, like there's already software out there that's better than Tesla's autopilot. So I don't understand why this is like, like Tesla's it, that Tesla thinks it's in such a huge lead with this when it exists elsewhere.
Well, it leads us to another thing that he talked about a lot of the show. Is like now he believes firmly that solving full self-driving is solving base you need to solve general AI basically. So the way you see it, because of his vision-based approach, you need to solve AI and computer vision, of course. The two are intricately linked, but Tesla has that. And to be fair, yes, like you say, so you say from a consumer's perspective, yes, there's software out there that is very comparable to Tesla Autopilot, if not even better. Super Cruise. I've been driving the Mustang Mach-E for a few weeks now, and on the highway using, I don't even know the name of the Ford system,
It's like
but
Blue
they're
Cruise or
linked.
something. Blue Cruise.
Blue Cruise. It works. It works well on the highway for the lane keeping and the traffic aware cruise control. The only thing it doesn't have really is the automatic lane change. That's the only difference. But for the most part, like it from a consumer standpoint, it works. I feel the same level of confidence in it and convenience than when I'm driving my Model 2 on autopilot. So it's very comparable. But on the back ends of things, when you get into a full self-driving beta car and you look at how they recognize its environment, there's no one else that's like that, I think, right now. And no one else that can run the kind of software that Tesla can run in car either, I think. So that's I think where they have a big comparably maybe of what you have in Waymo or Cruise, but those are company cars. I mean, it's not something that's in a consumer vehicle. So Tesla has definitely an advantage on that front. It's just how does it translate into a consumer product just yet that's useful for the consumer, that you're not literally a tester like the FSD beta people are right now. That is harder to see. But Elon seems to really think that Tesla is on the path to solve general AI and to almost simultaneously apply it to full self-driving and general use robot, or at least not. Well, the Optimus program is not. It doesn't now. You change again. It changed the goalpost a little bit on that. It's not really going to be a general robot at first. It's going to be a few years before that. But it's going to at first just try to tackle tasks that are repetitive and boring or dangerous. But the fact that Tesla think that it's a year away from that, or just a little bit more than a year away from that, and full self-driving at the same time, it's truly hard to believe unless there's some kind of incredible breakthrough, AI breakthrough at Tesla that we are not seeing coming. But yeah, should we do a quick ad read on Recurrent?
Yep. All right. This week, the Electrek podcast is sponsored by Recurrent, battery ports for EV owners. With Recurrent, you can check the battery before buying a used EV, monitor your battery performance over your entire ownership with monthly insights, then command higher resale values with battery condition report when it's time to trade in. Recurrent gives people confidence in EV batteries, whether they are a first-time buyer or a long-time EV owner. While legacy combustion engines have 2,000 parts, an electric motor has 24. The most important and expensive part of an EV is the battery. and it's literally a black box. Recurrent makes battery performance and expected range over time more transparent. Reports are free for individual owners, and Recurrent also has paid options available for car dealers to run bulk reports. You can sign up for your free report at recurrentauto.com or by hitting the link in the show notes.
Yes,
This is a pretty good product. I'm kind of actually excited that they're sponsoring. It seems like something that's missing from electric vehicle owners. Like, has somebody trashed my a battery? If you're buying a Nissan Leaf, for instance, is it something that
Welcome
we
to
need to worry
Recurrent.
about?
Our reports give you confidence.
Oh, sorry, I thought I could show the battery report in there, but they don't. There's just a video that show it. We're gonna try to get a battery, an example of the battery health report next time to show you guys. But here's the eligibility of the vehicle. So everything from a Tesla to Volvo, Audi, and Ford as EVs are eligible. That's good to know too.
Yep, looks like a great product.
Yes. All right, let me bring back the show note right here, and we're back. All right. Moving on to last week there was the Cyber Rodeo at Giga Texas, and we shared that our biggest concern, or the thing that we were most disappointed by, is that there was not really much information about the new Model Y made in Texas with the standard range all-wheel drive. But we got now the information that Tesla shared with employees that were able to buy the car. And like we suspected at the time, we suspected that since Tesla hasn't listed the product now, most likely they're only offering to some employees, which we were able to confirm. Tesla delivered just 20 vehicles that day, and they were all for employees. But what they shared with employees is that the car is the Model Y standard range all-wheel drive. It has 279 miles of EPA range, as we discussed last time. The starting price is $60,000, which has been disappointing for a lot of people. They thought that it would be a little bit lower than that because it's just $3,000 less expensive than the long range all-wheel drive, more or less. And here's the thing: it's not about really the value; it's about what Tesla can sell it at, and probably can sell it at any price right now if they wanted to. They could sell it probably $5 less than the 330 miles Model Y, and a bunch of people would buy it just because they want to buy the Texas-made one, the one that has the 4680 cells. Even though we don't have much information about that, about how that affects the longevity of the battery and the weight of the vehicle. I'd like to know the weight of that car. That would be interesting.
Yeah, charging speed, cold, heat, all those things have yet to be.
Good point. The top charging rate on the 4680 cell would be very interesting to have. Then what else is new on that car? Oh yeah, 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. So basically the same speed as the long range, which is 4.8. And there's a few other changes that was told by Tesla employees. So there's a magnetic center console armrest. I'm not sure what that means. I assume that the center console, the opening is magnetic this time, and a parcel shelf in the back too. So that's cool. But the vehicle is not yet listed on the website, but I assume it's going to be coming in the next few weeks as Tesla ramp up production. Speaking of pricing, we have another vehicle that got pricing this week. U.S. pricing for the Toyota bZ4X. Coming in at $42,000, so basically what we expected, or at least maybe a little bit better. Here are the trims. So you can get the XLE or the limited version. You can get it in front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. So the difference between the XLE and limited is the package, so a little bit more premium package than the limited version. Bigger wheels. Let me see. You get 20-inch wheels and 18-inch wheels. They don't talk about the range difference on those, but obviously it's going to be affected. The price difference is extremely small for if you want front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. It's just $2,000 more to get the all-wheel drive version. You don't have any battery pack differences, so the difference is in range is only if you get the dual motor versus the front wheel drive. So 252 miles of range if you have just the front motor. All-wheel drive drops you down to 228 miles of range. It's not the most efficient car out there, but it's pretty efficient too, because 118 for the most efficient version of it. 131 for the most efficient. That's actually up there.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Did they say the battery pack capacity? That would be interesting to have, because it shouldn't be too big if it gets.
Are these BYD battery packs? I can't remember if BYD was using, or Toyota was using BYD. I knew they were using BYD for something, but I can't remember if it was.
Well, they were for the only other electric vehicle that they have is the one that they sell in China. So
China,
that was definitely using BYD. But yeah, $42,000, and you can only run it up to 48 if you want to build the limited version and the all-wheel drive. So, and with Toyota, you still have access to, or at least this car is coming in the US in the spring, and Toyota just warned this week too that they expect to hit their threshold of 200,000 deliveries in the US sometime this summer. So that will phase out that will start the phase out period of the $7,500 tax credit. I think you get it for 6 more months, so you should have it all year. So everyone that gets a bZ4X delivery this year should get the full $7,500. So that brings you down to about the $35,000 car. Very interesting price point. Then after that, it starts reducing the tax credit gradually over the period of a year. So Toyota is still good for a while. I mean, there's still the talks of the federal tax credit reform for electric vehicles, but at this point, we're not really betting on that happening with the state of the legislative process in the U.S. at this point. Volkswagen is hinting to some upcoming improvements to the electric vehicles on its MEB platform, which is now basically all its all its electric vehicles. People mostly think about the ID3 and ID4, but you have the ID5, ID5 and ID4, basically the same car. ID6 coming, you have the ID Buzz, and then the ID Live and the AWD, they're like a business wagon that they're gonna have. They are talking about the range increasing to up to 700 kilometers, which is 435 miles of range. This was a presentation in Europe, so we assume that they're using the WLTP standard, but still, we could be talking about easily vehicles that are over 350 miles of range EPA at this point. So that's starting to get really interesting. Increasing the charging power, that has been an area where the ID4, ID3 have been lacking a little bit against the competition. Now over 200 kilowatts of charging power, that would be very interesting. Acceleration 5.5 seconds. Like we've talked about that before, but the Volkswagen is definitely not really like pushing towards the performance acceleration of its vehicle. Like they're not banking on that. In terms of a 700 kilometers, 400 miles range, I think that they're gonna reserve that for the AWD, the wagon aerodynamic version of it. ID Life, you can forget about that kind of range. Like the idea behind the ID Life is gonna be a very low price point.
Cheap price.
Yeah, they're talking about like a $25,000 electric car, so that's gonna be replacing like the what is it, the E-Up that they have? Cheapest one, cheapest version.
Yeah, it's actually Volkswagen in the US is I don't want to say a premium brand, but it's definitely on the higher end. In Europe, they make like the base model cars, like really, really, really base model cars.
Well, they think the Americans only want the big cars.
It's true.
Which, to a degree, it's true, but I mean, there's a market for everything every year. All right, we have a few more news items I want to discuss. Then we're going to jump into the comment section. We're already running close to an hour because we talked about this Twitter thing for so long. Sorry about that, guys. But if you have any questions, we're going to try to get to them in a few minutes. So put them in the comment section right now when I get to them. Lucid announced a performance version of the Air GT. So we had the Dream Edition that they've been delivering for a while. Now they move delivery to the GT version, but they seem to think that the people, they are hinting at the fact that people are asking for more performance version. So they decided to release a Grand Touring performance version of the Air instead of just the Grand Touring. So they unlock a little bit of horsepower, so at over 1,000 horsepower instead of 819, bringing the speed down from 3 seconds 0 to 60 to 2.6, extremely fast. You lose some range, obviously, with it from 469 to 446. Of course, you can also have the Grand Touring version with over 500 miles of range if you get the smaller wheels, but they make it sound like you can only get the 21-inch wheels for the performance version. Delivery starting in the US in June, and you need to be willing to drop $180,000 on this.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
It's getting up there.
apparently they feel like the people want to do that because they are delivering right now the Grand Touring version, which is not cheap either, $140,000, $139,000. But that I see your market for, because I mean, look at the Model S right now. Model S is also super expensive, not quite at that level, but I mean, if you can afford a $105,000 car, maybe you can afford a $139,000 car.
Right.
And the Air Grand Touring has the option of having 500 miles of range, which I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I know that a lot of people like it's a big selling point for them.
Yep.
All right. Oh yeah, that's the news that actually came out last weekend. That went quite viral. But go ahead, Seth. That's you posted it.
Yeah. So GM Cruise autonomous taxi was pulled over by police in San Francisco without humans, and then it took off. And then Cruise responded saying that it actually wasn't taking off; it was finding a safe spot.
Even though it was already quite in a safe spot.
It seemed like a safe spot, and like, once you're pulled over by the cops, you're not supposed to take off. But apparently the software decided that it was going to leave. So, this was I can't remember who showed it to me, but somebody showed me the Instagram Instagram video. So I put it on Twitter, and it got a lot of
it went viral.
feedback. It went viral. And so I was like, I better post a story, even though it's Saturday. I'm supposed to be with my kids. And Cruise got back to me via Twitter, and they also emailed with the same stuff, saying that chiming in with more details, our AV yielded to the police vehicle, then pulled over to the nearest safe location for the traffic stop as intended. An officer contacted Cruise personnel, and no citation was issued. We work closely with the SFPD on how to interact with vehicles, including dedicated phone number for them to call in situations like this. It's amusing, but like, this is something that's going to happen. This is the first time something like this has happened, but it's going to happen a lot
that
in
we
the
know
future.
of. They make it sound like it
Right.
happens more than we think.
Yeah, and like, frankly, why haven't they publicized like the full details? Like, why did it get pulled over? Like, what?
Yeah,
what,
you speculated that it might be the light, like the lights are off. Like
Yeah, the lights are off in this scenario, this time. So I don't know. I mean, we don't even know if it was driving when it got pulled over. Maybe it was just sitting there on the side of the road with the hazards on. So I look forward to Cruise kind of explaining the situation, and but more importantly, I think it got people talking about, like, all right, this is something that the future is going to have. How do we deal with these things? So hopefully that's, both Cruise and the SFPD and Waymo and Tesla and everybody else are starting to think about these things. Like, maybe the cops should have some sort of button in their thing where they just disable self-driving cars. I don't know.
That would be hard to implement, but
Right.
I get your point. All right, let's. We have any comments at this point? I know there was a lot of discussion today, but it's going to be hard to find actual question in there. Oh no, some people actually use that question.
Yeah. All right. Spikes 43 says, how can Tesla not miss out on the future incentives for charging infrastructure when they are able to scale chargers so much more effectively?
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. That's a bit related to our news that we just posted just now. We didn't really discuss in the podcast, I guess, but it's we just learned from the program in Texas with charging incentive that Tesla was not approved for the incentive in Texas. Money actually that Volkswagen was paying out as part of the Dieselgate standard that Texas decided to funnel to people that are going to build charging stations, and it showed that Tesla is much more cost efficient in deploying their chargers, basically costing 1/5 of the average charging station that wasn't applicant. There was a lot of applicants in the program, a lot of like gas stations and everything. So probably a lot of people that are paying like full price for a charger or two and then installing it. So that costs a lot of money. But also EVgo was in there, ChargePoint was in there, and ChargePoint was charging also like the way that we know that it was cheaper is that you could only apply for 70% of the cost of the charger, up to $150,000, and Tesla was asking just around $30,000 per charger, while others were asking $150,000 per charger. So if you extrapolate that to 100%, then it looks like Tesla is about like $40,000 versus the $200,000 per charger. So it's a big advantage. But yeah, so exactly the question is, how can Tesla not miss out on future incentive for charging? Well, here's the interesting thing about that too. So like a lot of incentive, they require that it's not just for a single company, so which has been the case so far with the supercharger network. But Tesla specifically said that they were going to install superchargers with CCS adapters or even CCS connectors on the superchargers. So maybe like a dual charger situation like they used to have in Europe when they launched the Model S with CCS, the Model 3 with CCS. So yeah, they need that for sure. While they missed out on since they already applied with that in mind, I don't know why they missed out on this specific incentive. The good news, we discussed it last week. Tesla was invited to the White House to talk, or at least to the Department of Transport to talk with the officials there, along with the rest of the industry, in how the bigger program, the $7.5 billion program for EV infrastructure, is going to be rolled out. So Tesla Elon Musk personally was on in that meeting. So I assume that Tesla has now all the information it needs to take advantage of that program and expand the supercharger network in the U.S. with what's the word? Interportability? Is that the word? When you're
interoperability, yeah.
No, that when adapting to multiple standard, interportability. So I think maybe I'm making that up.
I think the word is interoperability, but
interoperable. Okay, maybe.
Yeah,
probably
I don't know.
you really know what I mean about that. But yeah, that would be a big deal, of course, if Tesla opens up the network. I mean, let me tell you right now, I'm on a road trip in the south of the U.S. in a Mustang Mach-E, and so far so good. I went from Asheville, North Carolina, to Atlanta to Birmingham. No problem using the Electrify America network. But now I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm trying to go to Jackson, Mississippi. And now it's starting to be more difficult, where the Electrify America network is not going to help me here. I have to rely on some like dealership charger that are not up to standards. That's going to make the road trip more difficult. If I had a Tesla, or if I had access to the supercharger network, it would be a breeze, because there's actually a few charger in Mississippi, a few supercharger. But no Electrify America stations, or at least not in Jackson. It might be like in the south of Mississippi to service like New Orleans or something like that. But
are you able to use plug and charge on that thing? It just plugs in.
I haven't been able to use it, but what I've been doing is, because I know I can set it up with the Ford Pass app. I just haven't done it because I couldn't. I did it at the first time I used it, and it actually didn't give me an actual price on the charging, and I want to do all the stats. So actually, I've been paying myself on the, because Ford, for people who don't know, Ford lent me the vehicle to do the testing, and they wanted to pay basically through the plug-in share program with the Ford Pass. Ford Pass, I think it's called. And I wanted to include the cost of charging as part of it. So but it's pretty easy to just pay on the Electrify America station. It's not, of course, plug and charge is more convenient, but that's not an issue really.
All right, next question. Jonathan Root says, when do we start calling these Tesla price hikes corporate greed and beyond inflation or production growth?
Okay, another fair question. Inflation is certainly real, and I think it has an impact. Doesn't have as big of an impact as trying to improve margins. I don't know, because like that's the argument that is backing what Jonathan is saying here, is that while Tesla blamed supply chain issues, inflation for price increase throughout the last year, Tesla's gross profit margin have also increased on vehicles during that time. So you cannot just say that it's that. You're also taking advantage of the strong demand for electric vehicle right now, and improving margin is definitely that. Do you call that corporate greed? Look, if if they were starting to pay out big dividends to shareholders because of that, if a lot of people were making a ton of money, if Tesla was handing out giant bonuses and everything like that, which I mean, to be fair, they kind of do to Elon, well, through option, but then yes. However, for the most part, I think Tesla is using that money to increase production capacity, invest in supply chains, especially for the securing the critical materials. So, with that in mind, I think that's the right move for the future of sustainability and Tesla's mission, really. So I'm not complaining too much on that, but I get the point for sure, and it's something to watch. Like that's why we're here. That's why like we do our job, and we're not always being liked by Tesla and everything, because even though Tesla is mission focused and they're going towards that, you can easily devolve into corporate greed if you're not careful. And maybe Tesla is perfect and can do this internally and be their own watchdog, but more often than not, that doesn't work, and you need people from the outside to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you know, the invisible hand of capitalism is supposed to do that, but right now the demand's so off the chain that like they can probably charge even more than they are now and still have a lineup for months and months. So when other car makers start making enough EVs and compelling vehicles, I think maybe Tesla will bring their prices back, maybe not down, but like they'll stop raising prices. And also, like, once the other gigafactories like Texas and Berlin start catching up, I think that'll help as well.
Yeah.
All right. Here's a very important question. Are we going to get the Twitter app in our Teslas? I mean, you got the web browser, right?
Yeah, and I mean, Twitter is so easy to use on mobile that there's a lot of that I don't understand, like Tesla bringing to the in-car software, things that are probably more useful on your app. I think that's going to be one that's going to be more useful than a app. But I mean, if Elon actually was successful in buying it, then yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised if that happens.
Yeah. All right. New question, Andrew C. Have you heard of any Texas-made Tesla Model Ys delivered to non-Tesla employees? I have one on order with an estimated delivery date of May in Colorado, and I'm curious which one I will get.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, Andrew. You didn't buy a Model Y standard range all-wheel drive, so I don't think you're gonna get the one in Texas unless Tesla reached out to you and say, "Hey, do you want that instead of whatever version of the Model Y you bought?" I assume the long range all-wheel drive, and then you're like, "Yeah, that works for me" or something. So I don't think you're gonna get that. Certainly not next month in May. And no, we haven't heard of non-Tesla employees taking delivery. We only heard of the 20 people that took delivery on the day of the event.
All right. Next question, Jed Anderson. Have there been any new developments in the expansion of electric buses and other public transportation systems in North America? Europe and Asia seem to be way ahead of us in this respect. I would say there's like pretty much every day there's some news. A big one from my part of the world, New York, is that the state plans by 2030 to buy nothing but electric buses, school buses. I think probably a bunch of other states are thinking the same thing. That's one really big way to take a lot of diesel off the roads. Companies like Proterra and Lion and even Thomas and Daimler have tons of new big EV buses and trucks coming out all the time. So yeah, just keep it locked into Electrek. You'll get that information.
Yeah, and in terms of like large scale deployment, you have along with the 7.5 billion in EV infrastructure, there's 7.5 billion for transport, public transport, including buses. So there's going to be a similar program that's going to allow federal grants for deploying electric vehicles, especially like school buses, which are super easy to. Well, that's super easy. It's like, it already makes a ton of sense to bring them electric. So you're going to see a lot more of that. Yeah.
All right, and so far this is the last question, probably for you. Do Do you think the Canadian government is serious about the recent 2022 budget release claim that they intend to follow through with building 50,000 more public EV chargers?
Probably, but you have to go into the details, which I haven't done on that. But a lot of the time, when they say that like 50,000 public EV chargers, uh, we're not talking about fast charging station, which is what you need really. And for again, coming back to the trip I'm doing right now, and my concern of driving now between Birmingham and Jackson, there's quite a few level 2 stations along the way, but they don't help me for the trip I'm going to do right now. If there was a few fast charging stations along the way, the trip would be easy. So if they're talking about 50,000 more public EV chargers, a lot of them are going to be level 2, which are not completely unuseful. But like if you have like a garage in a city with people that they don't have parking at home, and then it can make sense to like charge while they are at work. If you live in the suburbs and you're driving into town and you're parked there in town all day at the parking garage, which a lot of people do, if you can charge during that time, well, you unlock a lot more value in those garages, which are often super expensive. So things like that could make sense, but for the most part, we need a lot of fast charging stations along popular routes and less popular routes too.
All right, that's it for the questions.
All right. Well, we appreciate everyone for listening to the show this week. We're a little bit long. I hope you're still with us. If you're still with us, you're a real one. And we'd appreciate if you can give us a thumbs up just for the algorithm. It loves that. It's free to do. It takes a second, and we appreciate it. And if you're listening on your podcast app, you can give us a 5-star review. That's also super helpful and free to do. And thank you to Recurrent for sponsoring the show this week. And we're going to see you same place, same time